Mm-mm-mm-mm. Bro, it's so dead. No music, no music. Perhaps I should just, play my. What was I playing earlier? Uh, Give it a few minutes. All right. I'm gonna just start talking because I was just trying to get some stuff kind of regulated at this fancy new setup in our HQ. So trying to make sure. Okay. Well, you need to not let it behave. It's not behaving. Okay. All right. That's as behavior as it's gonna get. Um. All right. So I just wanted to welcome everybody back. We are restarting our live stream. I know we've started and stopped this live stream more times than most government projects, but this time I think we've gotten it to stick for good. Um, Mainly the issue has been we plan the live stream on like a Monday or a weekday, and then either Parliament or contact meetings or any other meeting during the week pops up. And then of course we have to reschedule, and then we don't get to reschedule, and it's a little chaotic. So I thought, maybe Sundays would be a nice time to kind of just touch base with everyone, winding down the day. You're either heading home from Bay Beach, and you can have us on as your drive home behind the bridge. um, you know, uh, Noise, ambient noise, I would say, because I don't think we sound as grating as some of our colleagues or our counterparts might. But yeah, so we're back. This is the first iteration of the live stream. Not sure how long it'll be. It really depends what all we have to talk about. It also depends if I'm joined by a guest. Today thought I'd wing it myself, and just kind of touch base on a couple topics that have been kind of popping up, questions that we've been fielding, questions that we have ourselves, and so forth. My beverage for the day, well, for every live stream, is going to be coffee. Uh, and my cup says you've got this, which I didn't realize until now. But yes, my Cafe Bustelo instant, because I don't have a machine here at the HQ. Those who know me know that I was the envy of Parliament when I got my little Nespresso Virtuo in my office, but I tried to had to cut back a bit. But also, I wanted to take the opportunity to kind of use it as a teaching moment because a lot of my American friends are surprised that I like coffee so much. And in fact, a lot of my former colleagues in the Netherlands also were shocked that I enjoyed coffee so much. And I think it's important to know that we're not really a coffee drinking people. I think many of you remember that we had like an attempt at a Starbucks at Maho years ago, and it crashed and burned in spectacular fashion. I think it lasted a solid 7 months, and then that was that. Now, however, with the Coffee Lounge, shout out to Sima with Vandor Spaces, shout out to Sabrina, you have a few more options for a good cup of coffee. Before you had to uh, haul yourself to the front side, basically. But my coffee fact for today, which is why I think it's important that we also understand like the history of this general region. Um, Many people don't know Brazil is one of the world's, in fact, the world's biggest exporter of coffee. Most of what you drink is actually coming from Brazil. But from an economic perspective, I think we got to see it as well what it's done for Brazil. So a fun coffee fact is in 1932, the Brazilian Olympic team, they had no money. They were so broke, in fact, that they were unable to just send their athletes to the Summer Olympics. And I've checked this with a couple of Brazilian newspaper articles from back then. So they put the athletes on a ship to send them up to Los Angeles, and they each carried stacks of coffee that they would have to sell as they came to ports to be able to send athletes off the ship because you had to pay a whole dollar back then, which was, a dollar back then was like $100, but now over $100 is pretty much like a dollar. Shout out to inflation. So yeah, so I thought it was a cool coffee fact because it shows again the economic power behind having agriculture and export at the point in your country where you could literally go port to port, harbor to harbor, sell off coffee, and be able to compete in the Olympics. So yeah, today the oat milk creamer Cafe Bustelo instant coffee. People are like, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Melissa. Coffee? Yes. My mom is from Aruba, and my clearest memory when I used to go to Aruba a lot as a kid was that at 4 o'clock, one of my aunts would randomly say, cup of coffee. And all the aunts would get coffee. My mom would take a coffee, and I would get Kinder coffee, which was really just milk with a suggestion of coffee in it. And I think that's where it kind of started my love for it. Probably also is what stunted my growth, but hey. But yes, to the live stream. So as I said, we're starting back every Sunday at 5 o'clock. Um, we are planning to keep it going throughout campaign, after campaign as well. So be sure to like, what is it? Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe my channel, well, our channel, because we'll be here every Sunday popping up with some guests, some of our candidates. And also, as we roll out the manifesto, we'll be holding different live sessions to talk about some of the topics covered in it. So if you want to ask questions, you can feel free to do so every Sunday at 5 o'clock. I want to give some general updates on PFP, where we're at right now. We have the Cut the Curtain initiative, which has been a success so far. I believe couple weeks ago we had a press release go out where we shared the fact that the Council of Ministers had voted to accept it, the changes to the election decree. So what that means is that if it passes, the Council of Advice makes its way, back to the government, to the governor, then it can be adopted, and essentially the curtain that covers the voter at the voting booth will come down. Now, a few people have shared some concerns on, their privacy. Well, a few persons have shared concerns about privacy of the voter. Privacy of the voter is guaranteed. You have the two walls on either side of you. You have the wall in front of you. Nobody can see where you're casting your vote. I know some said that, yeah, the paper is so big. Well, yes, but the paper can also be changed. That is entirely within the government's purview, with advice, of course, from the Central Voting Bureau to be able to change it. So these are I call them the straw man arguments, just kind of put up to stop the real goal of taking down the curtain, which is of course to curb vote buying. That we have all heard, the stories. I've even had people that I know that have said that they have sold their vote, much to my disappointment, because of course that's never what you want to hear. But in these times that we live in these economic times, many people are at a point of desperation, and that's what we're trying to avoid. The that the desperate and the vulnerable are preyed upon by politicians seeking to purchase their vote for nefarious intentions. So essentially now we wait for the feedback from the Council of Advice, and then once that is received, it continues through the trajectory, and we can hopefully see that confirmed change in the election decree before postulation day, which is November 22nd, I believe, or something like that. And then uh, the headquarters. So I'm in right now in our Cold Bay Simpson Bay headquarters. We have had this for a couple months now, been setting it up so that we can be able to hold contact meetings with persons from the Simpson Bay, Cold Bay, GEBE, Pelican area. Of course, to welcome them, make it welcoming so that they can come out and speak to us. Not everyone is able to make town hall meetings. We understand that. We don't do rallies, those bacchanal sessions. So to have a more intimate setting where you can actually hear what our plans are, you come in, browse the manifesto. We're going to have some printed copies here in the HQ, and get to know what our intentions are for this upcoming election, and then what we look to address in from the floor of Parliament, basically. And with the ultimate plan, of course, this time around, a lot of people have been asking, so are you gunning for are you going to try being coalition this time? Well, most definitely. I think we've made it quite clear with our line of questioning, with the way that we've conducted ourselves in Parliament, that we are ready to govern. We've always been ready. It was more of just biding our time and learning the ropes, so to speak, and not being too eager to jump, because we see what has happened to parties that have been eager to jump into that governing situation. So that is the role of this HQ. The second HQ was launched in Sucker Garden on the 8th of September. We had a great turnout. It was a fun time, I have to say. The snacks were great. The steel pan was great. Shout out to Sweet Pan Entertainment. And that is also going to be meant to be used for contact meetings. We're going to be doing the same thing. We just found it not fair to ask people from Sucker Garden, from Middle Region, Defiance, Dutch Quarter, Belvedere, and Town and such to drive all the way over the hill. We who knows it, who knows it, feels it. So we all know what it is to sometimes cross the Cold Bay Hill. So yeah, it's just a matter of us having that ability to get you to reach out to us, to facilitate it and make it easier that you can touch us essentially, and touch base with us on what we're doing through our campaign. Also for the Sucker Garden headquarters, it will be sort of our social HQ. You're coming home from town after a long day. You could stop off on Fridays after postulation day and grab a drink with us. We'll be hanging out there in the evening time. We would have it open right now. Right now, we're working on a cooling solution. What we noticed, of course, is that it was very hot last time. So we're working on that, because it's not our intention to have people out there uncomfortable and sweating, because as you can see, we've all been kind of in a slow cooker for the last few months. So yeah, that's the update on the role of our headquarters. And then a question that we've been getting a lot, and I think I'll just address it a bit here, and also share my plans to address it in a more formal manner, is the thoughts on parties officially campaigning. Myself and MP Peterson, especially MP Peterson, has spoken about how essentially the hyper campaigning that has been going on is it's illegal. It's not what was intended, because it's not the official campaign period. You're putting people into a bit of a state of confusion from the moment that the first, you know, transferring the dynasty was mentioned. I had a lot of people come out and say, "But is elections happening?" And I said, "Yeah, it's happening next year," and it really sent people into a bit of a frenzy. So you have to kind of think of the lack of responsibility then of people who kind of kickstart this hyper phase of campaigning without having an official election date and such. It really had people thinking that government was going to fall. I'm not gonna lie, there were a couple of times where it might have fallen, could have fallen if persons had answered the phone. But that did not happen. So as it stands, elections is still slated for January. Postulation day is therefore in November, and that's when the official campaign period starts. So when people say that we've been silent, I wouldn't really say that. We've been doing our job, which is, of course, representing the people in Parliament, myself, MP Peterson, and MP Weaver, and then preparing and working on our manifesto. That is ready to go. Our website is also being updated. And when all of that happens, of course, the people will be told about that. And as well, if you haven't yet joined, we do have a WhatsApp community with a group ready for all announcements and updates from the Party for Progress. So there's a link that's been circulating on social media. Anyone who doesn't have it can, of course, feel free to contact me directly and I'll send it to you so that you can have, frequent updates. Whenever something happens, whenever we sneeze, you will know before we even know. But yeah. So that's a bit about why, we've been silent and such. As far as what's happening in Parliament, of course, this live stream is intended to continue with that update. And I think Sunday is a good time to kind of do that recap. For myself personally, on Fridays, I try to turn my brain off for a bit, spend Saturday catching up with family, catching up with friends, catching up with just myself, taking some time to decompress, and then Sunday as well. And then Sunday evening, you kind of start getting into the groove, planning your week out, planning the Monday. So it's a good idea, I think, for all of us to kind of refresh on what's been happening in Parliament so far. So this week we had the closing and the opening ceremonies of Parliament. So at the closing of Parliament, every faction leader is invited to give a maximum 10-minute reflection or reflective speech on the previous year in Parliament. Of course, the fact that we are approaching an election framed everyone else's framed everyone's speech. I myself reflected on the last 4 years. I believe that video is available on our Instagram and our Facebook page. And I think on our YouTube, I'm not sure, but if not after tonight, it will be. So I took the time to reflect on the last 4 years. And, we, over the last 6 months especially, we've had, I don't know, I call it self-aggrandizing, like it's when you have a government that's really good, and I think MP Weaver would laugh if she was here, really good at yoga. It takes a lot of effort to pat yourself on the back as often as they have. And I think, it's ironic to me, and I said this in my remarks, that there has not really been much of an original idea or plan coming out of this government. Everything that has been done was already being done. So it's a little disingenuous to say, we have achieved this, we have achieved XYZ when the previous government was already doing that. A lot of people maybe forget, but PFP launched on the 27th of September 2019. We had no intention or no expectation that there would be an election. So we announced on the 21st of September that year that we were launching, and then by the Monday, government had fallen. So I think it's curious to me because it's not like this government came about naturally. Let me put it like that. So I think it's always a little amusing to me then to see the pat on the back. So maybe a few more sessions with Ludi and I'll be able to do the same. And then, of course, we had the day after the opening of Parliament with His Excellency Governor Bailey. And Bailey Bali? I always say it wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Bali. Okay, so we had the opening of Parliament with the governor's address, of course, outlining the government's plans for what they envision accomplishing or doing as they move forward. And there were some points. There was, of course, a lot of discussion about the what is being planned in terms of the reform measures, what is being done, the national development vision, and that they're going to be considering and looking at all of the reforms in the context of the national development vision so that can then lead to the national development plan. So anchoring all of the ongoing projects under that umbrella, which was a little interesting to hear. there were His Excellency also mentioned. I have a speech here that's because I wanted to be able to, not talk from the air, but basically, he mentioned, donor relations remain a priority of government. Funding has been secured for several projects aimed at achieving the goals of the National Development Vision, mainly from the EU. And I found this curious because, something that I said in my own remarks, I think we need to start to really hold governments accountable for as a people. And I mentioned it on Monday in my remarks where I said that, we are often behaving as bad faith partners. Um, with any kind of money, there is accountability. I've said this a lot. I've been branded a 008 agent of the Dutch, etc., because of it. But it is the reality. Whether you're getting money from the Netherlands, from China, from the IMF, from Russia, from the UAE, from an African country, from anybody, there are going to be conditions attached to it. And I think the first thing that we need to do is remove that misconception, that purposefully spread disinformation, about money and how international aid and financing is done. It's something I've talked passionately about all throughout my term in Parliament, and I will continue to do so because I don't believe that I should fool people into thinking that any other country has it easier than me when it comes to getting money from other countries, whether they're original colonizer or not. Um, so that was one of the things that I found curious because we have, of course, the still kind of stagnant Dutch Quarter project which was also primarily EU funding. Um, I've asked questions about what has come out of that. Has the EU come to do an accounting of the money, how it was spent, etc.? Some vague answers received from the Ministry of Rami in Parliament regarding that particular topic, but it is nothing that surprises me with how certain answers come through. Let me see, that was that. His Excellency also mentioned building relationships. There was a lot of talk about that, I have to say. It was interesting to hear. And that government will continue engagement with regional organizations and discussions as well, and that they're going to intensify this in the latter part of 2023 with CARICOM. Now, as well as the Caribbean Development Bank and the OECS, the Organization for Eastern Caribbean States. Now, as you know, we also submitted a relationship development proposal to Parliament, where we also said that as Parliament, we should start to engage with our counterparts, so persons who are at our level in these other countries, in these other organizations as well. Because I do believe that engaging with our immediate neighbors is going to yield us a lot more return on investment than engaging with neighbors that we only see when we get or hear from when we get on a plane and travel to Panama or to Chile. So that is something that I was happy to hear, and I am going to continue to monitor that and see exactly how we move forward in that particular on that particular topic. And most pleasing to me was to hear that there is going to be an intensification then of developing and keeping the relationship with the French side. Now, the collectivité is our direct neighbor. We have not done much with them. In fact, it was, a National Alliance initiative to boycott the Simande celebrations because, it was erroneously believed, so incorrectly believed, that the prefet had signed a stop order for illegal works that were happening at a restaurant in Oyster Pond. No, hope all is well. At a restaurant in Oyster Pond, and I've mentioned this before on previous live streams, but we have to remember these things. So much is happening in the world between Russia and Ukraine, between COVID still being around, between everything else that's going on and the daily pressures of not just the global reality but our local reality. People tend to forget, and I think that as we get closer to election day, it's good to remind people of who people are, what they have stood for in the past, the relative about face that they're attempting to make, but I'm not sure they can properly make because again, we seem to lack a wider understanding of geopolitical realities. So I think, it's interesting to hear that they're working on these high level cooperation strategies, which I definitely applaud. And I just want to see Parliament follow suit, because it's good to know. For example, you've convened to develop these strategies, but we don't really know about it. And when I say we, I speak for myself, MP Peterson, MP De Weaver, maybe the whole opposition, I don't know. Because there have been a couple of things where we were kind of in the dark, but of course others knew about it. That's how they believe that coalition opposition kind of works, and that's okay. I'm not here to bother anybody's vision on that. The governor continued. The economy shows you know promise, it shows potential for growth, etc., while still, of course, battling the inflation that's caused by the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The central bank projected that our inflation will reach a level of 3.7% for 2023, and then will decline to 2.2% in 2024. I'm really hoping that that projection is valid, that it's accurate, and that it does actually occur, and that we see it kind of trickle down and impact the consumer. But there was an interesting focus again on the fact that we can see that things are happening due to there being construction. I tell people all the time, I'm not anti-development. We are not anti-development at all. But at a certain point in time, development for development's sake, and when I say development, I mean just building, just pouring concrete. That is something that needs to be examined. It is a temporary boon to an economy, of course. A perfect example that some might know. I went to school in Miami. Miami as well, big construction town, condos left, right, and center. But a temporary boom and then a dip. Now, Miami has the space. Well, they had the space or still have the space to continue, we build, etc. But we don't. That's the reality. So there has to be a sort of close attention paid to that, where you kind of say, well, maybe we press the pause button and then we focus on developing a different industry, developing our education system to the point where persons learn new, skills that can lead to different career paths. Because who really does construction give that boon to, and then when does it hit, and who does it hit the most when it does slow down? So there's that. We also heard some announcements about our hotel room inventory, which oddly will remain comparable to 2022, but a higher occupancy rate in 2023. I try to check as often as possible with those stakeholders in the tourism and the stayover tourism sector on how things are going. And I do have to say that from restaurant workers to hotels and guest houses, it has been a cry of this is looking like to be one of our worst low periods, so aside from everyone kind of closing the usual in September and such, it's difficult, to kind of see where we're going. We also had an announcement kind of in Parliament, but also in the paper, and I heard it as well from stakeholders, that the Westin, will reopen as a JW Marriott. And it was stated that, these are properties that have never come to St. Martin before. True that. But I want to make one thing very clear to people. The Marriott is coming because Westin is now part of Marriott. Bought their parent company. That's basically it. Rather than reopen as a Westin, they've decided to just slap another brand on it. I'm not knocking it. I think it's a great opportunity for St. Martin. It's been some time since we've had a Marriott, but having worked in the hotel industry and having spoken to these persons and these stakeholders, and knowing that a large part of why they have refused to come to our shores is because to build or to do anything, they have been nickeled and dimed on permit, on access to this, access to that. They've been asked to pay a consultancy fee of $15,000 or $20,000 a month to an individual who is, going to act as a liaison for whatever, politician and such. That's literally the truth, guys. That is what has been happening. I think we, have come to a point where we have to just be blunt and honest with each other and not continue to hide behind, well, I hear it. No, it happened. It happened. It is probably still happening. However, it's a little more tough to tell me that I need to cover, some random consultant when my property is already there. I just have to repair it and just change the sign outside and say it's a JW Marriott now, or it's a Hilton Vacations Club, or it's whatever. So I want to make that clear. That's usually how it goes with large corporate structures like that and large corporations. They can literally opt to make this particular thing this the next day, and it's not much skin off their teeth to do that basically. So yeah, I just wanted to make that also clear. We talked a bit about the governor talked a bit about main objectives of this government is to better control finances by improving financial management. So I really hope that means that we'll see that El Beham. If not, we can always draft it again and send it to the government, because I know that there are capacity issues. Um, so yeah, overall, His Excellency's address to us was pretty much the same as his predecessors was, as we've had before. Let's say from former Governor Holiday and such. There is also talk of sport tourism. I know that the Great Bay Sports Auditorium is undergoing some repairs, and I really hope that those repairs are done in a way that they last longer than the previous repairs have. Nope. When technology, man, technology. But yeah, so that was essentially it on what we've seen from the governor at the opening of Parliament. I'm curious to see how it goes for these next couple months until postulation day, and what happens thereafter, because I think people have heard a lot of talk. Has it been entirely straightforward? I'm not really sure. I myself have had my issues with how this government communicates. It seems, sometimes you say one thing and then you have to kind of backtrack on yourself and change the tune, and that comes with not being clear and open from the beginning. I think, and that's something that I maybe it's not for everyone to be that honest, and but unless it's national security, there's no need not to be clear and upfront. So yes, two last topics that I wanted to kind of touch on. It is, of course, what is on everybody's mind. GEBE. Um, yeah, I spent most of the last week being the listening ear then for persons who have been disconnected. Often, many people in a single neighborhood, not able to, mostly their water being disconnected, not being able to take a shower, not being able to, get clean water to cook or to clean or anything like that. And I think, we are now a year and change after the ransomware attack of last year. And I want to use this opportunity to also talk about the digitization of government services, and of what I would like to hear from government if, when the time comes to ask more questions about the progress of this particular project. So GEBE, persons being disconnected despite having records stating that they've paid X amount of dollars or guilders for the last year and change, and then being told, well, you're disconnected because you owe this amount. And, I think we have long gone beyond what should have been the solution, I think, which is, cut your losses, take your people and start from scratch. MP De Weaver is going to be coming out with a press release about this very topic. As you know, prior to coming to entering politics, she was working at GEBE, and she, has been very passionate and very vocal about what is happening, because it is a national security issue. And I think people, again, there's so much happening that it's tough to stay invested and interested in all of it. A lot of folks are kind of going through the motions every day, and that's difficult. That's the reality of what we're dealing with. But I hope that by hearing it kind of repeated, in this way, that it's something that people can still find in their some space in their mind to pay attention to. So MPW Weaver is going to come out with this press release, as well as a solution that she has said on the floor of Parliament before. But I'll let you read that from her, and of course, hopefully next live stream she can come in and touch base a bit with you all on what that solution entails. But because at the end of the day, we are feeling it. The GB employees I know are feeling it because, of course, we know how the custom is. If something is going wrong, everybody jumps on the person wearing the shirt with a logo. But I want everyone to also keep in mind that those people are not the ones making the decisions. They would prefer to have the issue resolved. And I think we can all extend a little patience to the GB employees as well when it comes to that. And then I want to touch on the cybersecurity side of it. So last week, I read every morning when I get up, I tell Alexa to play the headlines from the BBC, Reuters, etc. And I also listen to this podcast called Cybersecurity Today. Now it's literally just a guy who updates on the top 5 to 8 cybersecurity related stories that are happening in the world right now. I've learned about breaches to websites that I have accounts with that I then had to, for that day, change my password, change my two-factor, update my security for myself to make sure that my data was protected. And one of the incidents that happened was that you were hearing a lot of issues of U.S. airports, small airports, but still airports, complaining about air traffic issues, technical issues with their air traffic control systems. Now, when I hear that in this time of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, in this time of a multitude of script kiddies just trying to get some street cred on the dark web, I get very concerned because it brings me back to the questions that I've asked in the past when this GB ransomware attack first happened, which was, what is the cybersecurity policies like and status like at our other government-owned or government-related entities? Because everything you do these days is technology, and everything you do these days, someone is or has already figured out a way to break it, which is why cybersecurity exists as a solution, as an option, as a service for people. So I think for me, again, I'm wondering what is the status of Juliana Airport. Like, is there enough of a lockdown protection against penetration attempts of our air traffic control systems? Because the ATC here is responsible for not just our air traffic, but for Anguillas, for Sabres, Stacias, and I think even St. Kitts at one point, from a certain distance perspective. Duncan would have to correct me, but or my dad. But basically, what is the status of that? At the harbor, most, docking mechanisms, etc., the software that some cruise ships use, all of these things are things that are possible once they are connected to be attacked. And I think, it's good to keep that in mind. It's not meant to fearmonger. It's not meant to make people paranoid. It's meant to make people aware. So I think it's important, and it's something that I'll continue to talk about as we move forward. And then lastly, before I skedaddle, the Enya situation. We are submitting a letter to Parliament tomorrow to request the presence of the Minister of Finance. So if he or anyone in his team is watching, as I know sometimes they do, please to let him know that he'll be getting invited to Parliament to explain the details of what is looming and what has a September 30th decision timeline, of course, for Simatin. I know that the Prime Minister Pisa Sinkiruso has not, I don't think he's gone to Parliament as yet. The Twitter camera is already updated. We have gotten some information, but it would be good as well for the public, I think, to understand. And that's also something that I want, I think being able to quantify the impact of loans and of these types of situations where, and again, I want to say that just like we stated at IPCO, I do not agree, that we are being made responsible for a situation with a private company. However, I understand the crisis facing on Simatin, at least 3,000 policyholders, and I sympathize with them definitely. Nobody wants to wake up and learn that the pension that you have been preparing for, and you're approaching the time of, receiving it, or that you're already receiving it, is now in danger. Um, but at the same time, I think it's good to be able to quantify how much is this going to cost, not just government, but I think it would be good at one point in the future, I see it, to drill it down to what does it cost each sematana when these types of things happen, because that's really what it is. And I think from a communication perspective, there's been a lot left to be desired. So I'm hoping that this meeting request can be honored, and that we are able to, hear from the minister directly to the people then on what is happening. And one more thing also that is going out from us, and it circles back to the update I had in the beginning, where I talked a bit about why we've been silent, what we've been doing, preparing, why the gung ho hyperactive campaigning has been a bit off-putting for citizens also. I'm also sending some questions to the Minister of Justice this week to ask, about the guidelines, essentially, because if you've never been in it, then you don't really know. But what happens is you postulate, you hand in your list, and then there are several meetings that happen between you as party representative and the Central Voting Bureau. You also have, I think, a meeting or two with the Electoral Council if you've newly registered, which we did last time. And those meetings with Central Voting Bureau, with the police, are intended to prepare you so that you can prepare your candidates for the rules and the regulations and the guidelines on campaigning. For example, many people, don't know, you cannot block another party's posters on purpose. We had a situation last time with a candidate coming out there by the Corralita Road. So they had put their poster in such a way that our group poster was blocked. This, of course, is what happens when you don't have standardized poster sizes for all candidates and team pictures. But just a call to the Electoral Council and to the Voting Bureau, and then they had to move it basically so that it was fair. And it's done that way so that it is fair. Another thing that's done is the rules for placements. I've seen a lot of usage of the digital screens, which is, fine. I guess there's no regulation for campaigning on those, before population day. But I think we've all kind of noticed some billboards going up as well, and they've been up for a few weeks now. But there's not a post. There's not like a. I haven't seen anything advertising something in the festival village, or anything like that. So I would like the Minister then of Justice to kind of clarify to me through Parliament, what are the guidelines going to be? Has permission been granted, to put up these two billboards on public land, and if so, to whom? So those are essentially going to be the questions. So if anybody from the press is listening, and you already have them, so you can write what you got to write. But yeah, so that's going to be some of what we're going to be doing this week. It is a non-meeting week, of course, a preparation week. Most of the time, we will probably be hanging out down here. So if you ever drive by and you see the shutter is up, feel free. Just come and knock. We have coffee, water, and that's about it. There will probably be more added, but yeah. So I just want to thank all of you for joining, those who tune in, those who are going to watch it afterwards. Thank you again. Feel free to send in your questions, and until next time, choose progress.